Hi, it's Dave. So I've got another parenting episode here. So my 6-year-old son is now almost 7 years old and he doesn't know what rules are. No, it's serious. It's kind of crazy to think about it, but we've never introduced rules in our household. So he doesn't know like what is a rule that you're forced to do something and if you don't, then there's a punishment involved. I'm actually tempted to tell him that almost every parent in the world gives their kids rules, and if they don't obey them, then they give some kind of punishment. But I don't think he'll really believe me. His reaction will probably be, why? Why do people give, or parents give so many rules to their kids? And why do they force their kids, right, to do things that they don't want to do? Anyways, that's what I love about parenting without rules. See, my kids have a strong sense of confidence and determination. They do things because they want to do them and they feel like they're in control of the decisions they make in their life. I'm not the one making their decisions and I'm not the one forcing them to do things. In many ways, I think forcing kids to do things through rules and punishment stunts their emotional growth. I think the part of growing identity and kind of a major part of it is understanding and embracing responsibility. But being responsible for one's own decisions and thoughts, a person needs to take ownership. But if you have so many rules and you're being policed, it's hard for people to really take ownership of their own decisions. And I think because of kind of this system or systematic thinking that our culture is deeply ingrained in, we have a lot of people who live their whole life and then turn 18 and they don't know what to do because they don't have a strong sense of confidence and they don't know how to navigate this hectic and changing world. And a large part of it is they've grown up their entire life in a system of rules. Whenever they're at home, their parents institute all these rules, do and do not. They have like police as parents. They go to school and it's the same thing. It's a whole system of rules and they learn to just submit, right? And compliance becomes their greatest skill set. However, if you have compliance as your greatest skill set, right, what is that going to do for you? How far is that really going to take you? You are told what to do and you're told what to think, and then finally when you're given, let's say, adulthood or freedom at 18 or 21, whatever, you're let loose and you just don't know how to act, right? Because you're so used to compliance. This world that we live in is changing very radically, and I think people who are just being compliant and just follow rules, they're the ones who are getting disrupted the fastest. We live in a hyper-competitive global economy, and that's economy is actually increasingly going digital. And as a result, I think creativity is rewarded, right? This kind of independent thinking and high skills. And that's usually not developed if you're just kept in a box, if you're just doing what you're told, if your highest skill set, right, is compliance. I think there needs to be a certain degree of freedom and exploration for people to be able to make mistakes and to learn and to grow that self-confidence. Anyways, one of the big questions I receive with parenting is, if I don't give my kids any rules, then what's stopping them from, let's say, watching TV all day long? Well, first off, we don't even have a TV, so that helps a lot. But I get the gist of the question. And the gist of the question is every parent's worst nightmare, right? Is a kid, if they leave them alone, they become completely undisciplined and they just waste their life away, right? Playing video games, watching TV, cartoons, whatever, etc. And I think this comes from actually a complete misunderstanding of what parenting is and should be. What I mean by this is I think parenting by nature should be a co-activity. It's something that's done together with parent and child. And so parenting without rules doesn't mean you're letting your child do whatever they want. It doesn't mean you're just abandoning your child, right? Just for them to go with their whims and ways of life. Rather, it means that you are committed to work with them and to coach them through daily decisions and every moment, right? Decisions that they make and they're deciding and struggling to make. And you're helping them to come to the best conclusions. And this entails actually a lot of work. For example, last year, my wife and I, we started to give my 5-year-old son some computer time so he could play around with some desktop apps. He loves to explore like how the computer works, how apps work, and he was dying to make a website as well. And so we got him started with like a Wix or Wix.com. It's a website kind of drag and drop creator thing. So he could kind of make some website designs and stuff. And then he also got started on this website called Replit, which lets you do kind of some basic code and you can copy and paste some stuff. But we obviously didn't want him to be on the computer all day. And part of his personality is actually he's very strong-willed and he's very focused and driven, where to the point where, if you put a computer in front of him, he'll be on the computer all day, even as a 6-year-old, right? And so we worked out an agreement and we started to ask him, this took, many, many weeks, even, before we started to kind of introduce the computer. And we would ask him, okay, so do you want to use the computer all day? And do you want to use it so much you never go outside and you don't explore anything else, or you don't go places and you don't play with other people, etc. And we showed like examples of what happens to kids who only use computers all day, right? People who are just playing only video games or something, to say all day, or watching TV all day. And we started to help them understand the pros and cons, right, of certain activities, right, that become habits that consume time. And there are always pros and cons to everything, right? And a lot of times it's more complex than it seems. And we started to kind of introduce, okay, what if you use your computer sometime, right, versus like all the time, or, maybe never versus, all the time, etc. And we started to kind of grow the idea also of, for example, if you grow older and you know how to use stuff, let's say a computer, etc., to help people more, how that makes more sense, right? Where you could, by using the computer more, you're able to help people more, right? So anyways, we started to plant a lot of these ideas to give him kind of a framework of how to understand like his time in front of a computer. In the beginning, we started with about 30 minutes a day when he was about 5 years old. But the thing is, that wasn't just us telling him, okay, here's 30 minutes. Rather, it was like his decision too, meaning we're not just forcing something right down on him. For example, we discussed and we worked out like, initially how much time, right, to give him. And it wasn't really a rule or something. It's something rather that we're discussing and that he's ultimately deciding on and agreeing to. So he's the owner of that, right? And so the question is, okay, what happens if he uses the computer more than 30 minutes? Let's say after 30 minutes, he's like, I refuse to, stop using the computer, etc. Rather than punishments and rewards and bribes and all this stuff, which we don't do, right, in our parenting. Rather than that, it's about going back to discussing and kind of taking it more from this objective to take a step back, the pros and cons, right, of using it, let's say, longer and longer, and to kind of help him understand exactly like how much he wants to use it. And there's a lot of debates going on, right, with this. And it's not just a simple 5-minute thing, right? It could take days and days and a lot of creativity on the parents' end, on my wife and I, and also a lot of discussion where he always feels like he's in control, right? He is taking ownership, right, of his decisions. Eventually, we all agreed to extend it to 60 minutes a day when he was maybe around, when he turned about 6 or so. And sometimes though, like 60 minutes would be too short. So the question is, what happens if he he continues to use it and he's like, forget it, right? I'm going to use it for hours, whatever. Then it goes back to discussing, right? And it goes back to this idea of, what are the pros and cons? What can we do? Like, how can we solve this problem together? All this stuff. And again, we're not forcing something on. We're not giving punishment or rewards either way. It's not something like that. But we actually came up with an idea together where it's like, hey, if he's working on something important, then let's say he could do 5 or 10 minutes longer. And if he goes longer than 5 or 10 minutes, then maybe that uses up time from the next day, or he doesn't do computer time, right, the next day. Again, this isn't a rule per se, but it's more something that we're discussing, right, on a daily basis. We're talking about it. And ultimately, like, he's the person deciding, he's the person that feels in control. But on the flip side, as a parent, we feel like we're really contributing a lot to make sure that he's making the best decisions, because we don't want him, let's say, this is just our personal take, we don't want him on the computer 12 hours a day at 6 years old, right? That's not how we envision, right, let's say that the healthiest environment for him when he has a chance, right, to go outside a lot, to go on adventures throughout the day, to play with his sister, etc., to read books, to create something, to listen, play some music, etc. There's so much other things to do that we want to expose him to. So ultimately, it feels like we are also trying to shape his decisions, but we're shaping his decisions in a way where we're not stomping on his ability or his the feeling that he has that he's in control, that he's the one making control. I think that's ultimately what I come back to a lot in this series, is like this sacred ability for a person to make their own decisions. I think a lot of parents, we just stomp on that. We say, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. But that infringes, and it really just kind of like pushes down everyone's innate kind of spirit of wanting to be in control, to make decisions, and to be able to take the control of their destiny, right? The path of their life. And I think as parents, that's how I view it. That's one of my most important duties, is to preserve that feeling, the essence of that my kids are making their own decisions, that they feel like they're in control, right? And that's being respected by, let's say, their parents and the people around them. Anyways, a few other things with the whole computer time. My wife is working at the table, right, together with my son as he does computer time. And overall, it's great. My son loves, his computer time, and there's always adjustments and stuff. And it's a lot of discussions ongoing, but he's come to grips with, his own decisions of how he uses it, what he does during the time. And it's actually quite marvelous in a way that that a 6-year-old can come with such maturity toward a topic or a issue like using computer, and to approach it with such level of understanding and depth and responsibility. It's just kind of mind-boggling in a lot of ways. Sure, it took many, many months of discussion and working it out and coaching, etc. But to see him in his state and how he approaches it, it's amazing. So anyways, in conclusion, parenting without rules doesn't mean that you let your kids go wild and do whatever. No, it actually means walking together with them, and it means helping them understand the decisions that they're making, helping them understand how to make better decisions, and it's helping them to think through things. It's understanding, let's say, the pros and cons of different habits and situations and decisions they're making. It's also understanding and helping them understand the consequences of various time frames. For example, how will this action or decision help me or affect me tomorrow, in 1 year, in 10 years, in 30 years, right? Is this the type of person I want to become as an adult later, let's say 30 years from now, growing this habit, right? Because a lot of decisions that we make as people, we're growing habits. We're investing into the future, into our future person that we want to be. Anyways, there's a lot of things to consider, and kids are so smart. I think when we empower them with critical thinking and we give them that decision-making power, we treat that as sacred, that we shouldn't take that away. And we commit as parents to walk together with them. I think all things are possible. I'm constantly surprised at my kids every day, and I think they're like way beyond their years. And it's awesome to see just the development of kids who actually, are growing in that ability to make their decisions. And it's just amazing joy of being a parent. Anyways, I hope this episode has been helpful. If there's any topics or questions or kind of things you want me to address, go ahead and leave that in the comment section below. And we'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks. Bye.